complex mortgage world, finding the right direction can be challenging. That's where Lighthouse Advisors comes in. With over 25 years of experience, we provide fractional leadership and executive oversight, guiding companies through transitions, growth, and innovation. From IMBs to brokers to credit unions to tech firms, our team of seasoned professionals is here to shine a light on solutions, ensuring your business thrives in every environment. At Lighthouse Advisors, we don't just guide, we empower. Together, let's create a ripple of success across the industry. Email us today at laura@lighthouseadvisors.com.
Welcome to another episode of Illuminating Solutions, the podcast where we shine a light on the challenges and opportunities facing the mortgage industry today. And we offer real solutions to help you grow and thrive. I'm your host, Laura Brandeo, CEO of Lighthouse Advisors. So if you're ready to shine a light on what's holding you back and discover new ways to move forward, you've come to the right place. Today, we are in for a treat because we are joined by the amazing Suzy Lindblom, and she is an operational expert where she is going to share why we all need to continue to maximize our operational efficiency and strive to get better. Suzy, thank you so much for joining us today, and I can't wait to jump in. So here's your first question. With over 40 years in the mortgage industry and leadership experience across multiple sectors, we'd love to know, what key trends have you observed in operational challenges, and how do you recommend companies adapt to achieve their long-term efficiency and sustainability?
So, number one, thank you for having me. I don't know if I always like people saying over 40 years, but yes, it's been over 40 years. And my 40 years, the majority of it has been in operations. So I'm going to talk about the trends I see in operations, and it really is motivating your employees. It's as simple as that. And one of the things that I have discovered over the years and in my consulting is listening to the right people. Because most people talk to managers. And you have to talk to the user. When you talk to the user, you would not believe what you find out. And when they feel listened to, they tend to work harder. They tend to work better. They think that somebody has their back. And so that's how you get into technology. You look at the technology that they're using and what is the impediments that are causing them to not do their job efficiently. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I had some clients that they used 2 to 3 systems. The systems did not talk to each other, even though they thought they talked to each other, and nobody was listening, that this information wasn't carrying over. And, looking at so number one, listening. 2, looking at the efficiencies, and are they really doing what you think the technology is doing what you think it is? And then the duplication of work.
Yep.
Or work that doesn't even need to be done. I ask people, so why are you doing that? Well, we've always done that. But what is the purpose of that? And I'll give you an example. There was one that they were building a database. Or they weren't building a database. Let me rephrase that. They were maintaining a database. And this activity took the underwriters probably 15 minutes alone.
Oh, wow.
To put this information in. When I asked why they were maintaining it and who was using this database, nobody. It served the purpose 5 years ago.
Right.
Nobody stopped it. So making sure that you look at what you're doing and ask why. Why are you doing this? It is amazing that people just do what they're told to do without asking, why am I doing that? What is the purpose of this? And I think that as consultants, going in and asking the why and knowing how to ask the why is really seriously the most important thing for a consultant to look at when they go into a company.
I love that. And you're bringing back a few memories in my brain of working on the operations side that I remember one client I went into. I set up what I used to call the MacGyver meetings. And the reason why I made it a fun name so that people
Yeah,
were relaxed. And the purpose of the meeting is tell me the things that you're MacGyvering to get a loan through
I
the
love
system.
that.
Because you know as well as I know, to your point, the people that are in the trenches and doing
Yeah,
the work, they know what they're getting around within the system because, oh, I know if I put a 0 in this field, it allows me to go to the next
that's right.
field to make it so the screens move forward. And it's the question of, has anyone told the team that you have to put a 0
Yeah,
here in order to make this efficiently work, have the workflow work through? But to your point, at some point, someone changed something, but you know as
yeah,
well as I do, great operations people, they're problem solvers. And so
yeah,
they figure out how to MacGyver the
right.
system, how to get something to work through.
That's
And then
right.
the next thing you know, no one has actually addressed the problem. To your point of the database that 5 years ago it stopped and no one went back to say, oh, let's change this workflow where we're no longer needing to enter this data in there.
Exactly, exactly. I totally agree. And I've been in several companies, and my apologies for my dog barking. I've been in several companies where and this is so common in the industry. They keep adding conditions to their condition list. Nobody ever cleans it up.
Yep.
I had one company 5,000 conditions.
Oh my goodness.
When I went in and cleaned it up, I got it to 190. So, it's that. And think about an underwriter having to go through 3,000, 5,000 conditions
It's
to find what
crazy.
they need. And to your point, they get used to it, right? They get used to it. They know how to maneuver through it.
Yep.
But if they didn't have to maneuver through it, they'd be much more efficient.
Exactly. I love everyone take note of what Suzy said. Make sure you're speaking to the right people. Because if we're only speaking to C-level or we're only speaking to top executives, they're not the ones doing the work on a day-to-day basis. Make sure we're having conversations with both groups so that we understand what the needs are and then we're getting the right feedback. So great, great tip. All right, Suzy, next question. Your expertise spans across a broad array of area, from underwriting to credit risk to technology and compliance. How do you prioritize these aspects when assessing a company's operation? And which area do you often require the most attention when you are streamlining those processes?
So it's really, I'm going to use underwriting because underwriting is our most expensive from an operational standpoint, right?
Yep.
And looking at that, well, I'm going to back up because it's all operations, because what goes into underwriting matters. So looking at what the tools that the processors have or helping your brokers, know how to submit a correct file
Yep.
and what they need to do. So you need to look at it both from a retail and a TPO side, right? And what is critical in that file and getting it into underwriting. But across the board, it's the technology. And I'm going to go back to technology because with technology, I always describe a lot of companies are excited to buy the shiny objects,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I need
Yes.
this, I need that. And what you have is you have this LOS. Here's your LOS. And you have 20 arms that have no idea what the other arm is doing.
Yep.
And they're connected to the body, but they really don't interact with each other. So to me, I always envision this blob with 20 arms. And they have no idea, and it's just waving all over the place. And you have a lot of shiny objects that do nothing to help get you where you need to. So when I go into a company, I try to look at it holistically and look at, okay, you have to have your LOS. You have to have your POS. Now, what do I need to bring those two together? And by the time it gets to underwriting, I have a loan that they can make a decision on. Now, I've been an underwriter for many, many years, and I talk to a lot of underwriters about this because, and I will tell you, I'm the same. If I get a good package, I am going to look at that more favorably. If I get a bad package, it's just harder to make that decision. And you tend to, your mindset goes negative. It's like, oh, I took this file again.
Yeah.
And I have to look at it. And I know it's not going to be complete. So getting people to get complete files to an underwriter is one of the things. And teaching loan officers, explain what, if there's some circumstance, don't try to hide it from the underwriter. Tell them what that circumstance is and tell them why you think this is a good loan. The same thing with underwriters. For the underwriter, they have to tell QC that, right? And
Right.
I think that I've talked about this for years. A lot of underwriters have lost or never had because they've never been taught how to tell the story.
Right.
When I first started underwriting, we wrote paragraphs because we had to explain, why we made this.
Yes.
We didn't have exceptions, and we made that exception. We looked at a loan from an overall credit standpoint and justified why we were making this decision. And I think we've lost that art. And so that's one of the things when I go into a company is really talk to the underwriters and say, just tell me the story. Why are you doing this? Why do you think this is a good loan? And I know a lot of the technology helps you do that if you let it, if you have it connected right. You have, all the AUSs, right? If you read that, it's a story.
Yes.
So now you take that story and you justify that decision from that story. You get the appropriate documentation. So that's one thing that I try to, when I go into a company to help efficiency, is how to look at a loan from the time it comes into underwriting and look at that story through the AUS or any other tool that they have and complete that story with that. Sort of like what you and I were talking about. AI is a great tool, but you have to go in and read the story after AI spits out what it does and adapt that story to your end result.
Correct.
Underwriting, to me, underwriting is the same thing. You have, especially with the AUS and all the tools that we have, but people don't do it. To them, AUS is barely a tool anymore. They're so used to it, they don't even read it. And so just stop, read the story, tell the story, justify the story, and go on.
Yeah.
And so I try to really talk to underwriters about that. And again, what we were talking about is looking at what is that zero that you have to put in and what does it mean, right? Exactly what you said.
Yes.
So those are things that I really look at.
I love, a couple of things were running through my brain of the old saying, and we've heard it a million times in the mortgage industry, of garbage in, garbage out. Right?
Yes.
What you were saying in terms of just taking the time to tell the story with a loan narrative, right? If it's necessary, or taking the time to make sure that you're packaging up something so that to your point, we're human, right? We are not AI robots. And when that individual starts looking at that file and everything is put together well and it's complete and it has a narrative and it tells the story, your mind is going to be, this is a great loan. Look at this. Everything matches up. Everything is buttoned up. It explains everything. I'm happy. But the minute that you're like, ooh, I'm missing this. I'm missing this. This is incomplete. This doesn't make any sense. It's contradictory. One place it says here, then something else here. All of a sudden, our human brain goes, mismatch, warning, something's not right. Maybe they left this out deliberately. Maybe there's more to this. Your mind starts thinking all these things. where maybe that's not accurate. Maybe it's just, maybe a simple explanation to explain that job gap or to explain that large deposit. Our brains don't start filling in the gaps. We
Right.
have the answers. We understand the story. So to your point, Suzy, right? Those little modifications can make a world of difference. And I love what you said, that the underwriter tells the story for QC. So many times we don't think about that part. We're always thinking about the loan officer. We're always thinking about the broker submission, but we also need to think about afterwards, or 3 years later during an audit where you're not going to remember why someone did something 3 years
That's
before,
right.
and yet you're sitting there. But if you're able to reference and you go, oh, here's all the notes as to what the underwriter was thinking, and it buttoned it up,
Yeah.
no problem, right?
Yeah, I think it's so important that, as a consultant or as an employee, that you go into a company and you look at it holistically. We have that we tend to do things in silos. This is what the loan officer does. This is what setup does. This is what the processor does. This is what the underwriter does. This is what the closer does. And we've got to stop thinking that way, because we need to look at it as a manufacturing process. And this piece will never become the product we want it to unless we connect it all. And so that's what I try to do when I go into a company, because companies will tend to concentrate on an area. And that's one of the mistakes, because all these other areas are ignored and they really impact the one area that they're trying to concentrate on. So looking at it holistically is so important. And I think that we tend to forget that. And we need to make sure that we look at processes holistically, what starts it and where we want it to end. And to your point, it is amazing to me how many people in the mortgage in operations that I talk to that don't understand post-closing at all.
I agree with you.
Absolutely no idea.
I completely agree.
The loan stops when it funds, and they don't even think about that. And it's so, I think education and training is a lot that we need to do and look at this holistically.
Yeah. And to that point, Suzy, and for everyone listening, if you're going to have some takeaways to this, allow the entire organization to have that understanding. To your point about post-closing, right, is that, and I can speak for myself. It wasn't until recently, I've been in this, game for 30 years also. And until only the last couple of years, I never was involved on the post-closing side. And I said, oh my goodness, this has to change. Meaning everyone up front needs to understand that piece of it, because if they understand everything and how it all connects, well, then you're already going to have a great after funding process if the people up front. So to your point, if there's going to be some takeaways, don't put any of your divisions or departments in silos, because as an entire organization, when you understand all the other pieces, it allows everything to work well together. So that's a really, really good point. All right, Suzy, as we wrap up, this has been great. And man, operations is near and dear to my heart. So we could go on for days having this conversation. So I'm loving this. I'm loving this. All right. So I really want to end with, you've been doing operational efficiency your whole career, and I'd love to hear, I want to know, give me a story of something where you were so pleased with the outcome, something that you pulled apart or something that you connected and you really dove into that made such a monumental change. I'd love to hear a story of something in your career where you're like, man, that one, I still carry that pride.
Actually, it's to save the privacy of companies.
Yes.
I'll be a little vague here. There's actually several. I have been very blessed. I have had I have had good companies that I've worked for, and I have had great teams working for me and working with me. But one of them was I went into, and actually it had to do with post closing. I got thrown into, so I had operations, and I still had operations, and I was given post closing. And when I went over to talk to them, I found a very big error. And coming up with a plan to fix this error was a tremendous amount of work. This was not an overnight fix. This was a year fix. It was that big of an error. And one of the things that I did was sit down and looking at the process. What are you doing? How is this connected? What is the end result? Where do we want this to end? What do we need to do? And this had to do with Jenny Mae pools. And so looking at, okay, you have to do the first certification, and then you have to do the second certification, the final certification, and close out these pools. And there was no connection between the two. And then this was a company that not only did their own loans, they had TPO, they had correspondent, and they purchased loans. So purchasing, MSAs. And so you had them coming in from 3 different avenues, and people weren't recognizing the differences between those two. They were treating it as one process, and you can't treat it as one process. So, I think, like I said, I've had successes, and I think it's just stopping and looking at the problem and what is the people tend to look at problems on how I'm trying to think of the way to say it. They start at the beginning and not at the end. You have to start at the end. You have to know what you want that to be.
True.
And so I tend to start at the end and then bring it forward, because I have to know what I want to get to. And most people don't know what they want to get to. When they start a project, they have no idea what they want the end result to be. And I'm like, you always have to start the project with what you want the end result to be. I was over project management at a company, and when I got that department, they were still doing projects for 2 years. I'm like, you guys aren't doing a project anymore. I said, you're the owner.
Yeah.
And what I found out is that they didn't decide what the end result were, and they didn't decide who was the owner.
Yep.
And so they continued doing, so they were not doing only projects. They actually owned some processes. And I'm like, that's not your job.
Nope.
So I put a rule in that nobody could deliver a project to us unless they told us who was going to own it at the end.
That's great.
And so again, it's looking at that end result first. What do you want to accomplish? And now, how do you achieve those accomplishments? The other thing that people tend to do is they want to do everything at once.
Yep.
And I'm like, it's okay to do phases. This is your first end result. This is where you want to be because it's achievable. Instead of saying this, I want 4 quarters, it's okay to say I want 1 quarter because it is an improvement. And what happens when people want the 4 quarters and they don't think of it in phases, they get discouraged, they stop, they get another shiny object. Oh, no, this one's not working out. I want this. And I want to say one more thing because it just reminded me. One thing about technology is they don't talk to their people. How many, especially on a sales side, technology has been introduced into a company that the salespeople do not use?
Yep. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. There's like zero adoption.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's because they're
not part of it. They're not part of it. No one asked their opinion. Yes. No one included them in the process. No one included them in the rollout. And then it's just handed to them and they're told you have to use this. And they push back and they
Yeah.
say, we didn't ask for this, we didn't want it, and we're not using it.
Yeah. It's funny because I saw something the other day and it was with a company where they have a vendor, that one of the VOI vendors.
Yep.
And they're trying to get adoption into it, and they can't. And for the same reasons. And I think that, it's a lot of it is that we don't explain to salespeople the benefits of it, right?
Correct.
But it was funny because I got an email, well, can we try this vendor? And I'm like, you won't even use this vendor.
It's not the vendor. It's not the vendor.
It's not the vendor. And it was because one of their realtors had asked them about this vendor. So now they're like all excited. And I'm like, you already have a vendor that you can use. You just have to use it. And it's just as good as that vendor.
Correct.
And again, it's making sure that you talk to people, and from what I said at the very beginning, talk to the user.
To the right people.
To the managers.
To the right
That's
people.
Right. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, all of those points are so descriptive of our industry, right? I mean, I don't care. I mean, listen, I know we're the veterans of the industry, but I have to believe the people that were here long before us, that are no longer in the industry, I have a feeling we probably could get them on this call right now and they would say the same thing.
Yes,
because
I would agree.
I don't think it matters if this was 1975 or if this is 2045.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that our industry is very reactive. Again, I use that word problem solver. We in our industry, we're very driven by result, meaning that we have to hit a target. We have to bring these families home. We have to hit these numbers. We have to hit these projections. And when things don't go right, we move into action and we're very reactive and we want to solve everything right now. And that actually reminds me of a conversation I just recently had with a client where I was on a call and they were trying to solve something. And I said, guys, what you need to understand is we might not have the answer today. Today, in this moment, we don't have to walk away with the answer. I think we need to scope this out. I think we need to ask more questions. I think we need to bring other people into the conversation. But so many times we're so quick we have to have the answer right now.
Right.
But that might not be the answer. To your point, we need to know where we're going, what we need. We need to ask those questions and bring those people into that conversation and truly know what that outcome of success is before we jump in.
Totally agree. But I'm going to put a but in there.
Yes.
Because you have to have the right people.
You do.
We typically do not have the right people. And we ask too many people their opinion.
Oh, you're right about that. True. That is another weakness.
It's like, this is no, and it's like everybody has their opinion, which is great. But, I laugh because I've called myself a benevolent dictator before. Okay. And the reason I call myself a benevolent dictator is I'm like, look, I'll listen to everybody. I will listen to what you want and what you need. And a lot of times people will change my mind. And I said, but at the end, somebody has to make that decision.
That is correct.
So that's where the benevolent dictator comes in.
You are right. You are correct. And you are also correct in collaboration is a great thing until you bring so many people into it. It's just not productive anymore. So that's another great assessment that you've just brought up that we've seen.
When you think about it, have you ever been, and I'm sure you have, in a meeting with 30 people? And I'm like, really, 30 people?
You can't.
Why do we need 30 people?
You cannot.
Do not need 30 people. I mean, think of the cost. We talk about the cost in the mortgage industry.
Yeah.
Think about that cost of that meeting, right?
Through the roof.
Yeah. I'm reading this great book, how to not make meetings suck.
Oh, I've seen that book. I have not read it. Is it good?
It's a great book.
Good.
It's a good book. But, you're like, wow. And they actually add up. They give an example of how much, and you take that cost and then you times it by a year.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You could hire 2 more people. You could hire 3 more people. And we have meetings and we because we want to be nice. We want to get everybody's consent because we think we're going to get the adoption if we ask all the managers. And again, number one, we don't have the right people. Number two, we're letting too many people give their opinion and we're not getting anywhere.
Correct.
We're not getting anywhere.
All right, everyone, you heard it from here. Suzy just dropped so many nuggets of knowledge out there and really pulled something to the forefront. So remember, guys, this is about illuminating solutions. So if you have projects or efficiency, streamlining operations, whatever needs that you have out there, please reach out to Lighthouse Advisors today, because we are here to bring that efficiency, streamline, maximize profitability, and really look at things from a perspective that's fresh. We have no emotional tie to what is going on at the organization. So we are able to look at things not the way it's always been done, not necessarily because there is some emotional, we don't want to hurt, someone's feelings that came up with a certain process. That might have been great at that time, but here we are, everyone. We are moving forward. Technology and everything in our industry is moving so fast. It is time to really take a look and see how you can continue to build that efficiency and effectiveness, and ultimately profitability that will continue to rise. Suzy, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with all of us, and all the best.
Thanks, Laura.